What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro vs. Pro Open Championship Recap, 3M Open, course fit, and some early discussion. Justin, it was a fun tournament to watch, but from a betting perspective, from DFS perspective, it was pretty ugly for me. How'd you do?
Yeah, I struggled. I barely missed cashing all three of my lineups. So it was really frustrating because I had Harmon, I had McIlroy, I had a lot of the pieces. They just didn't end up together in the same line. So pretty frustrating considering, but I've kind of taken it on the chin with any kind of bigger events. I seem to do better at, the smaller offbeat, which I did again this week. I didn't do anything special, but basically made most of my money back from my disaster, the British Open, with the which is weird. That event on the point system, I don't understand. It's basically the same thing, but and then to follow it up, I got lucky because I always set my first guy out of like any of my smaller events, like the first guy I throw away, I usually bet outright. So I got lucky and hit the winner there. I think I got him at like 35-1, but just a little bit to cover my expenses. So pure luck, but it's just kind of one of those things I do because I always hate when you get down to like two people and you have to throw somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
So when I threw Batia out, that's where I ended up. I was like, hell, I'll just go play him 35-1. So
there you go. Yeah, I had a lot of those this week. Like Jason Day was close to being one of my hot takes as just being the best GPP play on the slate. Like I felt like I was seeing a little bit of a trend up in his game, and it had only been a month or so since he was consistently $9,000 and a chalky play every week because of how well he was playing. So he was very close to being in the hot takes. Ended up not, and he ties for second. And yeah, so frustrating week all around. But man, what a performance from Brian Harmon. We talked a little bit beforehand about like if you were to anticipate somebody winning at 125-1 and not just winning but running away from the field, Harmon would be kind of almost the last guy that you would expect it to happen to. So how did he do it? What did you see this week from him that allowed him to run away from the field, not just get the win?
Running away from it is a bit surprising. I agree with that. Him winning to me is not all that surprising because he's a grinder. Like I love it. Just because I love that style of golf because that's the style of golf I play. So it's easy to root for. Doesn't hit it very far, just goes about his business and all that. So it was fun to watch, but to win by that many shots, I think a lot of times too, even if he wanted to hit it in some of those bunkers, he couldn't get to them. So it may not have mattered. It may not have come into play, but I think it helps when you can go up there and free swing every club and know that it's not going to get you to those bunkers. And then if you have your A game, 98% from inside 10 feet, like 47 of 48. Come on. Like if you have any kind of ball striking week and do that, you're going to win.
He definitely seemed to have the best game plan. Like I saw a reference afterwards. He only hit in 3 bunkers all week, which I swear, like every single guy that I had a bet on, every single guy I used in DFS was in the bunker at least 3 times every round. So for him to do it only 3 times all week, said he very clearly not just had like this fantastic game plan to avoid a lot of these bunkers, but then was just consistently executing the shots he needed to execute. He was missing in all the right places, which again gets back to that course strategy discussion. And also like managing your misses is also about swinging well and being able to eliminate certain misses and things like that. So it was just so impressive all around.
So I thought when he got off to that slow start on Saturday that he was in trouble. Mm-hmm. I think that is what he did. What he did that was so impressive is he got off to a really slow start, 2 over through 4 or 5, obviously struggling, didn't know what to expect. And then he battled back and played really good and got it into the clubhouse, at a couple under was a huge deal for in my eyes of what he was doing. But then also I'm going to be the minority here, but I think the rain helped him on Sunday. And I'm going to tell you why. He forgot that he was leading the British Open. Yeah. He's worried about keeping his gloves dry, his grip dry, hitting proper shots. He wasn't listening to the crowd. He wasn't. I don't know anybody. You know how it is. If you play high level golf in bad conditions, the whole world goes away. You get done, you're exhausted mentally and physically, but you don't notice anything else. And I think that helped him.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call, and I think what you're alluding to is the rain kept him present at all times. That's one of the hardest things about being in contention is keeping your mind from wandering and like, hey, if I win this 2 hours from now, what's that going to feel like? Who am I going to call and celebrate this with? How am I going to celebrate tonight? All these different things. You just have to take it one hole at a time, one swing at a time, one decision at a time. So I'm in complete agreement with you. I think the rain just helped him stay present.
Yeah, and that's the best way to put it is. But I know it's raining hard, and that seems like it'd be easy to roll off 4 or 5 bogeys in a row and that stuff because it would. But at that point, he's got his A game. He's putting the best, which probably the rain has the least effect on. Mm-hmm. And now, he can stay in the moment with every shot because he knows how hard it is. And she was like, makes sense. Even like it's understandable once you think about it. The other thing is that he did so good was judging the skid of his chip shots.
Yeah.
So like when you chip on those longer greens where you're used to like a full shot is like stopping, the chips are actually skidding. They don't have time to spin. So he did a really, really good job at that.
Yeah, I think that's the other way that the rain helped him is it kept things skidding, so you don't need to spin as much. He's not going to create as much spin as some of the other guys. But then it also just made everything softer. It kept the course soft. And I do think, especially when you look at some of the talent around him, Rory, Rahm, Kem Young, these guys who were chasing him, they definitely would have been better equipped to deal with really firm conditions where they're having to hold greens with, the height of their ball flight or by having only a wedge in instead of a mid iron and things of that nature. So I think that helped Harman too. But ultimately, I think the number one thing that he did this with, like the stat that blew my mind the most, actually wasn't only being in the bunker 3 times. It was he made 6 bogeys and he birdied 4 of the next holes. So bounced back 4 of the 6 bogeys he made. That's phenomenal.
And he was clearly the best golfer in the field this week. Anybody can argue he had the best of the best beating down his door, chasing him with nothing to lose behind him. And he still went out there and dominated. He was the best golfer in the world this week. And people don't realize he was like in the top. He was like the 26th best golfer in the world coming into the event. Yeah. It's not like he's a slouch. So I think that this is, I saw somebody post on Twitter about, is he now second in line to Charles Howell that's made millions of dollars on the PGA Tour and can walk around the world without anybody noticing him?
Yeah. Yeah, so I saw that one too. That's a good one. It's worth noting he won by 6, and Data Golf gave him an estimate of 4.9 true strokes gained per round. To contextualize this, when Rahm won the Masters, he was at 4.6. When Rahm won the Genesis, he was at 4.6. So in terms of major championship wins, Harman was maybe slightly above the average number, but we've seen a couple wins this year over 5 strokes per round as the estimate. So I do think there was an element here of he ran away from the field because nobody else in the field was able to have their A game when they needed it. We saw Fleetwood really disappear on the weekend, just couldn't get anything going, especially on the greens. It felt like Rory, Rahm, even Kem Young certainly on Sunday, like any of these guys could have had their true A game at least one of the days on the weekend. Obviously, Rahm did on Saturday. But nobody was able to have the weekend that they needed to really push Harman. And I think in that way, Harman maybe lucked out just a little bit.
Yeah, I would also argue that he, like guys like Rahm weren't close enough to him. If you throw Harman out of this golf tournament, how great are we talking? Are we talking about the best finish and the best leaderboard that we've seen in a long time with everybody packed together? Instead, we're talking about a guy that's 5'7" winning by 6 shots. So,
which is kind of what I expected. I kind of expected Harman to come back a little bit and all of those guys to make 1 or 2 more birdies than they made earlier. So instead of, I think at one point the closest it got was like 10 under to 7 under. And I kind of thought, okay, well, if he goes back to 9 and 2 or 3 guys get to 7 or somebody gets to 8, all of a sudden we could be in for one of the best finishes And then nobody was able to make a run. Some guys even went backwards, and Harman was actually the one to make some birdies.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome. I loved it. Like, I thought it was a great display of golf. I know a lot of people are disappointed in what the carnage but it still took 12 or 13 under to win a major. It's not like it was 25 under. So everybody's yelling about how easy it played, and it still was barely double-digit par. Matter of fact, outside of Harman, nobody else shot double-digit under par. So I think the golf course held up fine. I do think the out of bounds was super fluky, and it showed its face a few times where it didn't need to. Ricky Fowler comes to mind. Straka, I think, hit one OB on 18. Like, there's some spots that I think that was really dumb. But that being said, there's a lot of dumb stuff in golf, so just add it to the list, right?
Yeah. What's your take on the penalty for every single fairway bunker being a chip out sideways?
I'm okay with it. Get a better game plan or hit a better shot.
Yeah. I feel like there has to be a middle ground somewhere between these bunkers and what we see most weeks on the PGA Tour. Like, I think it was Michael Kim who was on Twitter discussing, like, on tour, in the average week on tour, guys are aiming for bunkers because bunkers are easier than rough. And so there has to be a middle ground where it's not a full stroke penalty, but it's also not preferable to rough.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point. Like, the guys will tell you that I play with weekly around here. If I'm going to miss a green, it's going to be in the bunker, short-sided or not. I don't care. Like, I'm going to hit it in the bunker. I'm not going to hit it in our 4 or 5 inch Bermuda rough where you're guessing whether you get a jumper or dead or disaster shot. So, yeah, there probably is, but I would rather it be a real penalty than it be what we see day to day on the PGA Tour. And I think the basic answer is, if you want something in between, make the lips higher. The only problem is then you're going to we already do everything towards the guys that hit it high and far. So you're just going to give a more advantage to the guys that hit it high and far. So where's the happy medium? I don't know. Maybe make some bunkers a chip out and others not. So you think about it a little more, but I love it. I think they should do it every week, just like that. If it were my choice, but it's different for me. So
yeah, I like your latter idea there, that you have some bunkers that are extremely penal, some that aren't as penal. Maybe those are a little bit out of the way. So, like, if let's say you have a dog leg right, then make the bunker on the inside corner of the dog leg where guys may be trying to shorten the hole effectively. Make that one super penal, and make the one that, if you take the more conservative line and make the hole longer, make that one less penal. Something like that would work. I also think the other thing you can do is just rake the bunkers so they're not totally smooth, so that every time someone's in a bunker, they have a crappy lie, and making pure contact is actually difficult, instead of being like, for PGA Tour pros, making pure flush contact out of bunkers is extremely easy. It's almost like just hitting it out the fairway.
But didn't they do that somewhere, the Memorial or something, and got huge backlash for it because it became a luck? It kind of became a luck game. You got a perfect lie or a bad lie. That's my only argument to that deal. Like, I agree that it should be more, but like, there's nothing more infuriating in this game than two people hitting it 1 foot from each other, and the one person's chipping out and the other one's hitting it on the green. Like, that to me is the most frustrating part of golf in general. So I think that would bring that more into play. But if we could figure out a way to make that all work, I agree. I don't know the answer, and I think that's kind of you also have a PGA Tour commissioner who's not going to take chances on stuff like this because he doesn't want Rory yelling at him. So you're not going to get, and then the other problem is you get a tournament this week. Let's say they decide to do something like that, the 3M, and then 3M's like, why did I just sponsor a golf tournament that everybody's talking shit about? Because we did something different with the bunkers or whatever it may be. So we're in such a state of just everybody being complacent that's why everybody made a big stink about it. And then did you notice they raked the bunkers different the last day? The third round?
Yeah. I think that was a good adjustment. Basically, what they were saying, for those who didn't notice this, was in the afternoon of, was it Friday? I think the afternoon of Friday, like every single ball that went into a bunker went all the way to the edge, and so
Yeah, the
even
second
greenside, like you had no chance of going for the pin. Guys were going sideways, left and right, because every single ball that went into a bunker rolled all the way to the edge. So that's what they were saying. So they raked it a little more flatly, I guess, or whatever, just to keep the ball more towards the middle of the bunker.
Yeah, and I think you have a great idea, and let's make the bunkers really penal on high leverage shots where you can
Mhm.
reach par fives and two for the long hitters, and if they hit it in that bunker, they're chipping out, or even second shots into par fives. But then if you have a 490-yard par four, maybe the bunker is a little bit easier around the
Mhm.
green, or fairway bunkers gives you a little bit better chance. I think there's something to that. If you go after a back left pin on a par three, it's got a really penal bunker, just flag high left. But,
Yep.
if you miss right, it's got a pretty easy bunker, and let the course kind of set it up that way.
Yep.
I just don't know. I don't know that the state of our game is good enough to do that. I think if anybody did, it'd be Liv. I think Liv would, if you went to Liv and said, hey, why don't you try this? I bet they would try it before the PGA Tour would.
I think it's also something the tour could experiment with, like in the swing part of the season.
Well, I mean, you just played two off events in the last 3 weeks. You can experiment with a lot of things.
Yeah, there as well.
So,
Well, nobody's watching those, so you're not really going to get the same feedback from those as you will otherwise. I want to return to one last thing about Harman and the Sunday specifically. What did you think was the turning point, if you will, for Harman when he kind of knew like he was going to get it done?
I mean, there's so many spots there that I'll be honest. Even when he made the bogeys early, just the way he looked, I felt like he was in control. A matter of fact, I think Vegas was so far ahead in this game because I think so many people in the public thought that a big name was going to make the run. And they made Harman like a minus 200 to minus 250 favorite going into the last day. And that's pretty strong considering who's chasing him.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really believed he was in control. I know he made those bogeys. He made some really good putts. But I think that you and the easy answer, right, is those long par putts. But I honestly don't think they mattered. And
I think it
that's
was the
very
birdie
rare
putt.
for me to see.
I think it was the birdie putts on 6 and 7.
So yeah, I mean,
Because so he had just made a bogey on the fairly easy par 5 fifth, including a horrendous drive that could have been worse than bogey, right? Like he could have easily made 7 or 8 on that hole.
he took
Did
it
well.
unplayable. He took it unplayable and then hit
Yeah.
so he could have made a par too. I mean, he hit a
Yeah.
hell of a second shot,
He
and
did.
then a pretty easy up and down. He failed.
Mm-hmm.
But then
And
you
then
got
he
to
comes
talk about
back.
Rahm.
Well, first, I just think it's an important point with Harman because he makes 2 20-plus footers in a row for birdie on difficult holes too, especially number 7. And I think what we both can attest to here is like you can make a perfect read and hit a perfect putt from 20-plus feet. Doesn't mean the ball's going to go in. To make a 20-plus footer, you have to get the read right. You have to hit a strong putt, but you also have to get just a little bit lucky that it goes in. So to have both of those fall and to give himself that cushion again and give himself some breathing room when it very easily could have been the point in the round where things really tightened and he suddenly felt the crazy amount of stress of having the names chasing him and getting close to him. I think that was enormous for him. And without those 2 putts falling, it could have been an extremely different Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, my only point was that Rahm hit equally bad of a tee shot, if not worse, really, for how far Rahm hit it. And he ended up in like a 3-foot wide area where he could hit it on the green. He hit it on the front fringe, whereas Harman hit the exact same shot and was in a gorse bush and had to take an unplayable. So, I mean, yeah, he hit a horrible shot and probably got what he deserved. But some of his chasers hit really bad shots that got lucky.
Yep.
I mean, easily a 2-shot swing from Rahm, and still were unable to catch him.
Which can even be kind of swung in the direction of that that in itself, like that bad break of him being in a gorse bush, Rahm hitting a worse shot and being fine, that could have contributed to Harman being rattled and suddenly being in a much more stressful state of mind than he was previously or than he was after making those 2 birdies. So I thought that was the most important part in the round. And after he made those 2 birdies, nobody else was making a charge. It seemed really, really easy from that point on.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we know how not easy it was, but I just think it's a testament to how good he was really playing. Like he in my eyes, he really was playing that good that he just never felt any of the heat that he should have felt. No matter what you can blame it on anything. He should have been way more stressed than he was. And did you hear the Brendan Todd story about him, by the way?
No, I didn't.
You have to go listen to it.
Well, why don't you tell it to us?
I don't remember. I don't remember it well enough, but I just know they were still playing at Georgia and they got like cut off or chased down by some, and they pulled into the same parking lot as some. It was a big old redneck wherever they were, and Hardman was staring him down, and the guy they said huge bald redneck is what Brendan Todd said, and he said he looked at Hardman and said, "What are you looking at, cockbite?" And so everybody on the team called him cockbite for like the next month.
Oh, that's hilarious!
You have to go look at it. You have to go listen to it. It's a great story. So, he had I just think he's just always been that little guy of like just fiery and.
Why don't we do this? When we finish the show, when we get off the show, why don't you go find that story? Send it to me on Twitter so that anybody who's listening and wants to see this story, maybe they can't find it, they can find it on Twitter just looking up either one of our Twitters. How about that?
Yeah, I'll do my best to find it. It was so funny. It was one of those deals like you see some of these stories in passing and you never really pay attention to it. And for some reason, I just happened to listen to it. It's a really good story, though.
It's a shame they didn't talk about that on the air and say his nickname Cockbite on the air.
Right. You think you'd have gotten in trouble for that?
Maybe just a little. Who knows? Anything else on the Open? Oh, I know you wanted to talk about Justin Thomas. Why don't you start us off on that conversation? Because I think that's a really, really good one to have.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of questions. You know what I really am just curious of, like, how bad is he feeling it right now? Like, you think Brian Harmer felt pressured the last 5 holes or 10 holes or whatever? What's going through Justin Thomas's head as he shoots, a mid-80s round and has no chance? And now everybody's like, well, Brian Harmon's obviously on the Ryder Cup team. Is Justin Thomas off? What's his spot? And that kind of segues into this week, right? So this week at the 3M, you got people with travel. He obviously got there earlier than people that made the cut. And are we just looking for the guys with the most talent? Like, would you be surprised if he flew back and won this week? I mean, what is there? Maybe 4 guys or 5 guys, 6 guys with the same amount of talent as him?
Yeah, I would be surprised because I think there's something really bad mentally going on. And I think the best place that we can see this, you have to go all the way back to the Travelers Championship in 2017 to find an instance of JT losing over a stroke per round around the greens. Like, world-class short game, potentially best of all time type short game from him. He lost over 3 strokes per round with his short game at the Rocket Mortgage and lost 1.8 around the green at the Open Championship. To me, like, that doesn't happen unless something just isn't clicking in his mind right now and he's just kind of lost all confidence. So in that regard, I think it's really, really tough to see him suddenly just showing up this week and having what it takes to win.
Man, I disagree. I think he's starting to own it. And he's like, hey, I'm struggling, but I'm going to get better. And if it comes together like we know that it can for him, I think that what we're going to find is he's going to go back to hitting the proper shot instead of the perfect shot. So I think he's chasing these perfect shots for so long that he's going to go back to just hitting the proper shot. And a week like this could be the week that it kind of comes out, because it seems like everybody wants him to fail, which is weird to me. Like,
Well,
what has
I
he
think everybody
done?
wants him to find it. I think everyone feels really bad for him and wants him to get it together.
Man, I don't know. It's it's weird to me because I don't know if just the way people talk and even the stuff they say on air, and it just doesn't feel like he's got. Everybody just is expecting him to go down this path, and I mean, they're even asking Rory about it. Like, why are you
Mhm.
asking Rory about Justin
Yeah.
Thomas and what he's going to do for the Ryder Cup and all that stuff? Like Rory, I mean, even Rory's like, hey, he's super talented. Like, what do you want
Yeah.
me to say? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I would not be surprised if he finds himself in contention. The other side is I wouldn't be surprised if he shot a couple of 75s and mailed his ticket home. It's just I think it's high volatility.
I agree with that. I do think there's a really, really wide range of outcomes for him. One thing I'll say is I think it's a step in the right direction for JT to be able to just say like head on, hey, I'm really struggling right now. But I also think that there's a difference between just acknowledging it and still having no confidence in your game, and where let's say Cam Young was at a few weeks ago. If you remember coming out of the Travelers where he finished 60th, Cam Young's comments were like, listen, I know my results suck lately, but I'm actually playing a lot better than what they suggest I am. Then he shows up to the John Deere T6 and a T8 finish at the Open. So I think I'd like to see something of that nature from JT where he can point to something and say, you know what, I'm figuring something out. Things are getting better, even if the results don't really show it. Kind of like with Jason Day coming into last week, like there was at least one event where he started to turn it around after a few disastrous events in a row. So I want to see some kind of sign from JT, some glimmer of hope and reason for him to be confident again before I start to back him.
So the other side of that for me is didn't Billy Horschel like when he shot a million somewhere, shot 86 or 7 somewhere, and he's like, I'm actually way closer than it looks.
Yeah.
And then I think he came back and played okay the next week, but has pretty much continued to struggle. I mean, he was in tears in his interview, like, man, I'm trying. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
I'm not trying. It's just, and my game is better than my scores. And I think that shows you how hard golf is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think there's a difference there because like Horschel was bad. Horschel wasn't, he had one good round and then one bad round or things of that nature. Like he was losing multiple strokes per round, event after event after event. So that I think that was a little bit of a different scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Billy Horschel and Justin Thomas seem to be playing about the same level of golf right now.
I think JT might push back against that one.
It's just bad. I mean, it's just bad.
It has been bad. Last question about JT. Do you think there's added pressure for him because his buddies Spieth and Fowler are now playing really good golf again? Or do you think he looks at their comebacks as reason to be confident long term that no matter how low it gets for him, he's going to find his way back. He's going to be just fine in the long run.
I mean, I don't know. You tell me if he wants to be Smiley Kaufman or Jordan Spieth. I mean, they're both his buddies, and Kaufman
Very
hadn't been able
true.
to
Yeah,
find it
very
back.
true.
So, I mean, I don't know what's going through his mind. You know, the thing that I like that I'm encouraged most about all of them, right? Whether it be Smiley Kaufman or Jordan Spieth that found their way back in, is they seem to love life outside of golf too.
Mm-hmm.
Even Justin Thomas, I know he grew up in a very golf prominent family with his dad being a teaching pro, but I'm not sure that it's an end all be all for him. Like I know that sounds bad, but I think there's more to life than golf, and I think some of those guys get it and some of them don't. So I think he's going to try hard. I don't think he wants to fail. I mean, he's competitive. But that being said, I think that he also knows that golf is not going to just dominate his life so much that he can't enjoy life outside of golf. And that's a hard step. I mean, it was a hard step for me to take when I turned, I mean, hell, I played for 14 years. When you just stop, and I'll be honest, like there's occasionally I miss the grind, but I miss competing. I don't necessarily miss the golf side of it. So I just wonder if he's going down the same thing. And I think he'll be fine. I think he'll figure it out. He's really good. Like it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to take a couple of good weeks and get a little bit of confidence. And you know what? This is kind of one of those deals where his dad's his teaching pro. Maybe go see Butch Harmon. Maybe go
Yeah.
see somebody. Just go take it. You don't have to go see him long term or forever. But, even when I was playing and I worked with McCormick for a while, I would go see one person a year random and just listen to what they have to say. I mean, I might spend $100, but I might not ever do anything they say outside of that lesson. But you're figuring out positions and what's going on.
I also think we've talked a lot this year about what Scheffler is doing and how one of the most impressive things about Scheffler's season is that at no point has he allowed the putting woes to seep into his long game. His ball striking has remained absolutely absurdly good, no matter how bad his putting has been. I think JT has kind of been the example that we've been warning against when it comes to Scheffler, that sometimes when a guy is struggling so much on the greens as he has this year, it's only a matter of time before those frustrations seep into the long game. And sometimes it's literally just the frustration of it gets into the long game and kind of messes with things there. And sometimes it's related to practice time, right? Like if somebody's putting in extra time with the putter trying to figure that out, then maybe they are skipping sessions that they usually do with their irons, or skipping driver sessions, things like that. And then they start struggling in those areas because they're practicing less. Whatever the case is, I think that's part of the story here with JT. And so maybe it's forgetting the long game and saying, you know what, I've got to just figure out the putter. And once I do, I know that my tee to green game is going to come back.
Yeah, and that's what's weird to me is that he hasn't found a way to compete with his F game tee to green because, I would think that at some point he'd be like, hey, I'm going to chip and putt it so good this week.
Yeah.
But I think he might be struggling it so much that he doesn't know what to go work on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the cyclical side of it, he doesn't know what he's supposed to be working on. Like, he's like, I've never struggled throughout the bag this much.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth noting with him, like if there is something that I can point to as a reason to think that he's got a chance to break out of this sooner than later, it's he hasn't had consistently like bad round after bad round. He's had a handful of atrocious rounds. In fact, the 3 worst rounds of his career since 2019 and the 2 worst of his career period have happened in the last 3 events. He lost, the last 5 events. He lost 9 strokes in round 2 of the US Open. He lost 6 in round 1 of the Rocket Mortgage. And then he just lost 9 again in round 1 of the Open. If you take those 3 rounds out, or you just make them like an average bad round, let's say a stroke or 2 lost, all of a sudden his numbers don't look terrible. Maybe he battles back to make the cut at the Open, and then who knows what he does on the weekend, right? Like maybe he then goes on to have 2 really solid rounds, or have 1 great round like Rahm, and all of a sudden we're saying, hey, JT's back. So in that regard, maybe there's some hope for him to kind of rebound quickly. Do you think he should be on the Ryder Cup team?
I don't right now. I don't know how you justify putting it on there. You can talk about locker room stuff and all that all you want. I just don't. I don't see how it works. I really don't.
What would you have to see from him over the next few weeks to be back in on JT for the Ryder Cup?
So one of the guys that I paid a bunch of attention to that I think is very smart is Ben Cooley. I don't know if you know who that is or not. He on Twitter, I think he's widely intelligent when it comes to golf, which is odd for me because I usually think people that have never played the game are idiots and have terrible takes. He said that making the playoffs and then not going to the next round of the playoffs might benefit JT, and the fact that he pushes hard to get into the playoffs, plays really well. Everybody perceives it as stepping up under pressure, and then he either has to win or go home type of situation. So if he goes home, well, it's not his fault, but if he wins, oh, look, he stepped up again.
Yep.
I just don't – I think he's right, and that shows you perception-wise why I think it's so wrong. I mean, I'll take Taylor Gooch over Justin Thomas right now all day. He's every bit as likable in the locker room. He's won 3 times, albeit on the live. I understand we don't know how good. Nobody knows how good that is comparably. But that's where I stand on that deal. And I know that that's widely unpopular, but I'm okay with that. I just think that if you had to now, if JT comes back to form, like I love him as a locker room guy, and I think it'd be great. I would love for him to be there. I think he's a great representation of our country and what we want in golf. But at this point, if we want to win, I don't think he's the right fit.
Gooch is an interesting one. He's got 3 wins on live, and it seems like he played damn good golf in all 3 of them. And other than those 3 events, he's been really bad. So extremely volatile, which wasn't necessarily his MO on the tour. So kind of just a weird season for Gooch, I guess, where 3 dominant performances and everything else has been a disappointment. I don't know that I would have him on the Ryder Cup team either. But to your point, like I don't really know what I would have to see from JT. I think one thing I will say is for me to put JT on the Ryder Cup, I'd have to see some hint that the putting is coming back, because we've talked about it before. Like in match play, your ability to make key putts is hugely, hugely impactful. I need to see him do that once. He can't just post a top 10 or 2 with great ball striking. I need to see him make some key putts in key moments.
Yeah, and I just think any kind of rounding into form would be great. Just show some form. But like I said, I think it's in there. I think he's got it. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out the rest of the way. I just think it's got to start somewhere. And I think this field would be a great spot for it to start. This is a great golf course for it to start, a great field for it to start. And yeah, I didn't, like I said, I didn't. It's just an interesting conversation that everybody seems to be so stuck on, of him being on the Ryder Cup team or why is he struggling. And I just felt like the experience that we have playing, it's got to help people understand that this is just really that hard. And and it also shows you like how good Rory is, or how good, Scheffler is, and how good Rahm. These guys that continue week in and week out, like it's super impressive. We don't see droughts like this from them.
It's unbelievable how consistent they are. And it's why I always kind of roll my eyes at the like disappointing Rory once again takes. Like, guy's unbelievably good. He just hasn't gotten the win, but we talk about all the time, winning golf tournaments is crazy hard and you need some amount of luck to do it. I'm sure he will win again. And when he does, the floodgates might open. He might rattle off like 3 majors in 2 years or something once he gets that next one. Let's jump to the 3M Open, talk some course fit. I mentioned it after the U.S. Open that there's some really exciting nature about coming out of a major championship and returning to a course that we have significant data on, and we can just lean into the course fit model again. The 3M Open here at TPC Twin Cities is one of my favorite course fit models because of the way it rewards ball striking. We just had a week where after round 1 at the Open, it was pretty clear the skill sets that were needed for success there at Royal Liverpool were accuracy off the tee and then all things scrambling. Kind of the opposite here this week. Distance, number 1. Iron play, number 2, but specifically it's an emphasis on long irons. So that combination, distance off the tee, long irons, that really speaks to the best players in the field. And I think it really allows the best players in the field to separate from the rest of the pack. So I really like the way this week sets up. What are your initial thoughts for TPC Twin Cities?
I'm a big fan of getting back into more of these type of events. I love it because I feel like you get back to the most talented players having the best chance of winning, in my opinion. And the most talented players drive it the best. And, I would say arguably the hardest thing to do in golf is hit long irons. So you're looking at, get back to the talent. And the people that win here and the people that show up every year know they have a chance to win, outside of the ones that are just trying to scrape by to retain status or whatever. There's a reason Finau's coming back here. There's a reason Cam Young's here, Cam Davis. They're the guys that it fits are going to come back and play this place because it does fit that much. It kind of it's the opposite side of Colonial. Like the same thing. Like this place fits me so good, I'm going to make sure I go there.
Yeah, completely agree. It's worth noting, like, one of the winners, Cam Champ. I mean, if you could not find a guy whose long irons are more disproportionately good compared to the rest of his irons than Champ. The guy loses a ton of strokes with both aspects of his wedges, under and over 100 yards. He loses strokes with his mid irons, 150 to 200, and he's in like the 95th plus percentile in every single aspect of long iron play: strokes gained per shot, proximity, greens and regulation, good shot percentage. Everything about his long iron game is really, really good. So it's nice that we have such a clear recipe for success here, kind of like we did at the Travelers. Coming back from a major championship, we get the Keegan outright that week. I have high hopes for this week as well.
Well, it's so funny that that's the first name you came to, because I think he actually won here last year. Yeah. So you have
last year, 2 years ago. I think last year was
20. You're right. It was 21. You're right. It was 21. But you have a guy that's come in, obviously had struggled, and come in tied for finished 51st and then 17th. And you're going to price him $7,600 on DraftKings with the best course fit that you'll ever find for him. So he's obviously starting to find some form. So do you think he goes overlooked at 7,600, or do you think he's going to be uber chalk? Because he's one of the guys that I had circled, and how do you not play him at 7,600 where he's shown form and he's coming to his single best golf course on the PGA Tour?
So I don't think he'll be chalky. I'm not sure that I'll go to him on the main slate. Where I think he's going to be a really strong play is in Showdown, because I do still think there's a really, really high chance of a missed cut for him, but he's a great scorer. So regardless of what score he shoots, like whether it's 2 over, 2 under, 5 under, whatever it is, you can pretty much guarantee that his DraftKings scoring is going to be better than what you would expect for that number, which really lends itself to Showdown when you don't have the missed cut risk. And then maybe depending on where he's priced in outright. To be honest, I haven't been able to look at the full odds board yet. I don't have any outrights yet, so make sure you're paying attention tomorrow. The outrights article will be out fairly early in the morning, I would suspect, if not by, let's say, like midday, early afternoon. So outrights will come then. We will be in Discord all week long, talking all things DFS, all things betting, whatever. The core and more from Josh will be out on Wednesday, as well as my hot takes Wednesday. So everything, all the information will come out. Just don't have a ton for you this week. But do you have anybody else that you think is really standing out to you, like in your first look, that's maybe underpriced, maybe that you think, one of your just pure bet on talent picks, anything like that for this week?
Well, so, I'm struggling with how much does travel matter, right? So how much does travel from somebody that I love this week is Hogard, but he just finished 23rd. And now he's getting on a late airplane to get over here. And how many days, how satisfied is he with his, with how he played? And is he just flying over here, or is he still grinding it out? The other thing is DraftKings at 7,600 has 3 guys: Ryan Fox, Cameron Champ, and Justin So. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's 3 uber talented guys with should be really good course fits. Like, what? They just stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to probably do some skill set stacks, even with travel. And I know that sounds dumb, but like, I'm going to play one with Finau instead of Cam Young, because Finau wasn't in contention. He got back over here early. He's won here. Cam Young just grinded to win a major.
Yeah.
Is he mentally exhausted? Is he going to be into this golf tournament? Or is he just so talented and this course fits him so well that he's just going to come back over here and play well?
It's a great point, because Not to go back to Keegan again from the Travelers, but he did make the point that week that he felt like missing the cut at the U.S. Open helped him. He got there early, as you said, like he went mini golfing with his kids. He just enjoyed some time there, and kind of though I think the way he put it was it allowed him to mentally and emotionally reset before the Travelers in a way that he probably wouldn't have been able to do if he had made the cut, if he had been in contention the week prior. So I definitely like the concept of maybe targeting some guys that the field is down on because they just played poorly and saying, you know what, it was just 1 week of golf. It's a very different type of golf than they're used to playing. And if they missed the cut, if they played poorly, that actually maybe gave them some extra time to reset, to work on some things. I think Keegan mentioned that he saw his coach and figured some stuff out that he'd been struggling with. That's something he wouldn't have had the time to do. So can definitely be an interesting route coming out of a major, just actually purposely targeting the guys who played poorly enough last week to miss the cut and have that extra time to prepare.
Yeah, and then the only other guy that I saw that was vastly mispriced in my eyes was Hadley. I feel like he's way mispriced here. He should be a high sevens guy probably here, in my opinion. He's 6,900. Outside of that, like that 6,900 range is pretty crazy, and you could even go like a mini stars and scrubs here and play like. Knox has been playing really good, 6,600. Ramey's a good fit here, 6,900. You know, you can play some stars and scrubs here and add some of those talent at the top with them. It's just there's a few guys here that just kind of stick out to me for what you're going to get. The course fit for Knox has got to be horrible because he hits it short. But he's just is one of those guys that I think if he's in good form, if he finishes – at 6,600, if he finishes 15th to 20th, you really get a lot of value out of him.
Unless he's like 20 to 30% owned, I'm pretty sure Ludwig Aber is going to be a core play for me. Fits everything we want at this course. Distance, his long iron play has been pretty great so far this season, even though his approach play hasn't on the whole. I mean, we've talked about it before with him. Like, he's showing the type of dominant driving that we very rarely see. He very well could already be one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the entire world. We mentioned it before the John Deere, like he had been really struggling with his iron play and putting the weeks prior. And we said, you know what? It's a really small sample there. Like the guy very well could be quite good with his irons with the putter. He gained over half a stroke in both at the John Deere on his way to a top 5 finish and struggled with the putter again at the Scottish. I just really want to buy low on his talent. Maybe a lot of other people are going to have the same thought. It wouldn't surprise me if he's chalky here. But, man, it's going to be tough for him to get to a number that I'm not really interested in playing him this week.
Yeah, and I agree. It's kind of one of those things that goes to my saying here. Like there was a lineup that I built early that I could play Matsuyama, and instead I was like, man, I really would rather go down to Aber and then move up to like an Eckroad at 75 over, a 60, well, all that group at 6,900. So yeah, definitely like, I just don't see him being chalky. If he is chalky, I'm not going to have any problem fading him, kind of similar to Finau last week. Like when Finau came in super chalky, I said, I'm going to fade Finau and Fleetwood. It worked out on Finau really well, and Fleetwood's kind of crumbled there at the end, so it really didn't hurt me that bad being out on either one of those. Kind of the same thing here. I think that if I can pay up to get to Matsuyama, if Aber is super chalky, I'm going to do it.
I like it. At the top of the board, do you think you're going Cam Young?
No, I won't have any Cam Young.
Interesting.
I just don't. I think when you contend for your first major, man, it does something to you. Like, yeah. you stare. And I mean, he hit so many bad shots too that it wasn't like it was a fluke or anything like that. I know it's a different golf course. I know it's all different, but I when you contend for your first major, I just think it does something different to you, period. That being said, this should be the best course fit for him. That's why he's playing. So if he goes out and wins, I'm not surprised. That's not my point. It's the fact that he's the highest price guy on the board. And if he 75, just mailed it in and went home, I wouldn't be surprised either.
he did hit some poor shots on Sunday while in contention, but his ball striking stayed really, really good on Sunday on the whole. And his ball for the week was unbelievable. Gained 4.3 strokes per round with his off the tee plus iron performance. That's spectacular. The issue for him has been the putter. Like yet another guy, it's just the putter week in and week out. And I made this point talking to my dad the other day. It's like the time when his putting turned around was pretty much when Tesori took over. He finished second at the match play, then seventh at the Masters, putted really well both of those weeks, and then he's just been awful. So, do you think there's any chance that like he and Tesori just aren't seeing the greens well together, or something like that, or is this just completely unrelated to Tesori and it just so happened that this is when he started to get really cold with the putter?
Or is it just the fact that he spent a couple of weeks and got kind of lucky?
Yeah, it could be that too.
That's the way that it all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the people just don't realize how talented he is, that all he's got to do is get a little bit warm with the putter. He doesn't have to make everything. He just has to be average, and he's going to be in contention because he's so good off the tee. I'm more concerned with the chunking of wedges. And it didn't hurt so bad on the last day because he hit a couple of wedge shots that were not good, but they rode up the face and were kind of like fat flyers that went about the same distance. So, I mean, like that's what's concerning to me.
If he had the on and around the green performance last week at the Open that he had the previous week at the John Deere, he would have beat Harman by 2 strokes. So it's close for him. I really think it is. Like he just has to have the week where he finally does spike with the putting and or the on around the green play in one of his dominant ball striking weeks. It's only a matter of time, it seems, before that actually happens.
Yeah, but the putter's got to be good or you're going to miss the cut here. That's just all there is to it. I mean, you're not getting a 4 over par cut, you know.
Well, he could do something like he did this past week where he's just doing enough with the ball striking that bad putting isn't making bogeys. It's just failing to make as many birdies as he otherwise should.
Yeah. And I mean, I would expect a little bit more of a shootout here too, right? You can't get away with not holding anything, in my opinion. I think he's super talented. I think he's going to figure it all out. I hope anyway. But at this point, for all the travel being in contention, just knowing the mind and golf the way that I think, I'm going to be out on him.
Interesting.
As a matter of fact, I'll probably even go ahead and say that I'm going to bet against him. I'm hoping I can get Finau plus money against him and Sung Jae Im.
That's an interesting call.
So
because to me, like Cam is the better course fit and maybe the better talent. They're really similar, I think, in a broader picture of just overall talent. But the distance and the long iron play go to Cam Young over Finau, and then you also have the fact that Finau's been just as bad on the greens. So if the only reason to not play Cam Young is because he can't make putts, what are you playing Finau for?
No. I'm not playing Cam Young because of him being in the
contention.
The in contention at the major. That's the only reason. I'm not worried about anything else. It's just a late flight, the disappointment. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of that goes into it. There's no way that you're not disappointed when you have a chance to win a major and you don't do it. This week might be a little bit different because Harman was so good, but I just think in general, I'm not a proponent of playing somebody that just misses out in a major the week before, especially their first major.
I was about to say that last year, it's worth noting that after finishing second in the Open, he tied for second in his next event. But he did have a week in between last year before he played in the Rocket Mortgage. So not quite the same. But I do think it's worth noting maybe that, he did come back and still play really well. I think he can do that again this year. But, man, eventually he's going to have to make some putts. The last thing I'll say about it is I do really like a Cam Young and Hebert start just because they both have the incredible driving and they both are really, really good with their long irons. So you maybe have a bit of a skill set stack to start if you start in that combination.
And there's enough guys lower priced that can really play well to make something like that work.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. I think that'll do it for this week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed watching last week, even if you had as bad of a week as we had in the betting world on the Open Championship. Thanks again for tuning in. We will catch you next time.